I'll mention the bit about knowing your classroom before the first day of class. And as Dr. Kamenicki said, I'm Dr. Leedy. 24 years ago today, I was sitting in the same spot that you were. Somehow, I'm not sure if that means that I'm really smart or really, really dumb that I have not managed to leave yet. But I am one of those tales where you just never know what the future is going to hold. It seems like every time I went to the next step in my education, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And yet I ended up somewhere where I never really thought I would go. And so, it's good to have a path, an idea of what you want to do, but you want to make sure that you keep your mind open, your eyes open to new opportunities, because there are so many jobs. You'll find that if you're new to a university that has a graduate school, you'll be meeting all kinds of people that have wonderful, fulfilling jobs that may not be something that you had really thought about before. All right, so today we're going to talk about getting started in the classroom. As I was coming in, Dr. Kamenicki was asking about, previous teaching experience. So for some of you, you'll have some input as I go along. I'll ask some questions. For others of you, you may be thinking, Monday is a big day. All right. So for many of you, this is the first time that you're teaching, right? And so you have learned the material. Obviously, you have the grades that say that you have content knowledge. That's not in question. You're going to deepen that, expand that in your field. But what is going to be new is how to teach that material. That's not always that evident. You yourself have probably had instructors that you knew the material and yet had a hard time in the classroom. All right, it doesn't necessarily go together. All right, so it's a new set of challenges. The other thing that may be new is that you are now an employee of the university, and so you have certain responsibilities in that capacity that you might not have considered before. Academic dishonesty. You may have heard of students of cheating. Sometimes something happens, sometimes it didn't. How do you handle that kind of thing? Equity and diversity, something we're particularly concerned with at the university. If you look around the room, you see lots of different kinds of people, and we want to make sure that we're being fair, accessible. And how do you do that? What kinds of things do you have to think about? Accessibility, civility, that seems like that would go without saying, and yet one of your new roles will be to make sure that there is civility in your classroom. Sexual harassment, again, you think, why do we even have to talk about this? Because now in your new role, that's part of your responsibility. FERPA, the Right to Privacy Act, you'll have presentations today on almost every single one of those issues. And so we're giving you tools. You'll also want to make sure that you write down contact information so that if you do have a question, you know who to call. It's fairly easy. If I get a call and it's like, well, that's not really my area, but I'll help you find the next person. All right? So you're the face of UT to your students. What you project, they reflect back to you. All right? And so you want to have a certain confidence. You know this material. All right? And you also are going to be given tools so that you can handle most situations, and you'll gain some experience as you go along. All right? So the first thing to figure out is, what is your exact role in the classroom? Are you the instructor of record? Who is the instructor of record? That's the person whose name goes on the grades, right? So who is it that's actually responsible for the class? It might be you. You might be sharing a class. Your name might not be even on the books, and you may be more of an assistant in the class or lab. So what's your responsibility? Are you supposed to design a syllabus and all that goes with it? Is this a course with a set syllabus? Like in my Biology 2160, 2180 labs, the teaching assistants are given a syllabus that must be followed, right? Is this a multi-section course with, that's really what we are, multi-section with specific rules and responsibilities so that all the sections are treated equally? So you need to know, what is your role, what are the expectations of the university from you in that role? You'll want to make sure to meet with your department head or your course coordinator to figure out what that role is. If that's not been made clear to you yet, Monday is the first day of classes. So you want to figure out what your specific role is very soon so that you can be prepared. All right? That syllabus, I view that as a contract between you and your students. It works for you because it gives you a set of guidelines. It works for the students because they know what your expectations are. So it used to be not so many years ago that the syllabus was basically a little bit of contact information, kind of where we're going for the semester, and not much more. My syllabus for one of my classes is 8 pages long, right? It is a contract with very specific language about the grading responsibilities, about my expectations, about when exams are due, right? Very specific information. If your course does not have a set syllabus, you're going to want to find out again from your department chair or course coordinator what has to go into that syllabus. Typically, as brand new teaching assistants, you're not put in that role right off the bat where you have to come up with all this stuff. It takes quite a bit of time to get prepared for class. What goes on a syllabus, right? Certainly dates are important. Sometimes those move. You need to give your students fair warning if you're going to move up or move back a quiz or exam date. Mine, I have them set in stone, so especially for the students who somehow have managed to have a real life outside of UT, if they have to balance work or family responsibilities, they know what days those are, so it's important. A clear grading policy and expectations so that your students know how they're going to be graded, so that you know how you're going to award those grades. You'll have to have information about the academic dishonesty policy. I'll touch on that a little bit. You'll have more information for that later, and we'll talk about a little about the judicial process. That academic dishonesty, it is an unfortunate but real issue, and now you, as an instructor, have to deal with that kind of information. What are you going to do about that? So the department may have a specific set of instructions for you. What is the threshold for when this becomes an issue? What are the steps that you want to take, right? Make sure you can document your position, right? So if you say, you plagiarized this, I'm giving you a 0. What information do you have to back that up? How do you know that that's plagiarism? So you have to have proof, right? And one of the tools that I use, because we do quite a few written assignments in the biology labs, is there's a tool in Blackboard, which if your course uses that, you'll get intimately familiar with it. Blackboard is our learning management system in LMS, if you've ever heard that term before. It has Safe Assign, where the students submit the report, and it sends them and you a report back saying where that information came from, whether it came from another student, whether it came from a place on the internet, right? So that's a black and white tool that you can use. You do have to carefully think through your actions and those consequences. I'm not telling you to let it go, absolutely not. But what I'm telling you is if you think that this is an issue, you need to be ready to justify that. And your first, probably once you figure out that there's an issue, your first step is going to be to talk to a course coordinator or your department chair. I found this, what do I need to do? If you're new to UT, if you're new to teaching, you're going to need somebody to give you some advice as you go along the way. All right? So be prepared. All right? We had the little mic kind of issue. Know the room that you're going to teach in. Go to all of the rooms. Now, many of the rooms are locked because they're mediated and they have quite expensive equipment in there, but you'll at least want to go by how long does it take me to get there? Then add 15 or 20 minutes because you're going to have to swim through bodies at some times, right? It gets very busy in the hallway. And you can also go online to classroom services, and they will give you information about every class. How many students does it set? What kind of mediation is there? What kind of programs are on the computer? So how do you change lighting, right? In some rooms, we have this mysterious panel, and you push buttons, but that's what I spend a little bit before class the first day. What buttons do I push? There are some rooms that even have shades that raise and lower that are all mechanical. So it may not be as easy as flip the light on when you walk into the classroom, right? Outlets, if you need to plug in a laptop, where does that go? Network connections, those kinds of things. Exact hardware and software. So if you use a particular program, it may or may not be on the computer in the classroom. So those are things, if I have a video that I need to show, I'll go the day before, the class session before. At the end, I'll make sure I try and show that video to see if it works or not. All right? So all of those things. Academic support services, classroom services are very good people to get to know. They are here very quickly, usually on the desk. Yep, so I see one right here. There's a piece of white paper that's pasted that has their contact information, right? So they will come, they can fix light bulbs that are out, they can tell you if something's not working, they can come to your aid if you need that. And there's a phrase, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. If you are nice to them, you get nicer results. You know, hi, I'm in the classroom, I can't figure out how to get this working. Can you send somebody over? Is a lot better than, hey, I have a problem, you need to get here now, right? The difference, right, I've been staff for 21 years. The nicer you are to me, the more likely you are to get good results. I'm not going to, not do what I'm supposed to, but I'll be a little more helpful than I need to be if you're nice, right? That's reality. The technology we have so many different kinds of technology. I wouldn't use technology just to use the technology, right? But if it augments the experience, adds to the experience, we have all kinds of things. Learning Ventures offers training on Blackboard, which is our learning management system. It can be used simply as a way to post grades so that the students know where they are in the class so that they don't have to keep coming to you and asking, what's my grade, what's my grade? They can look on there and see. There's online tutorials, there's training sessions face-to-face, or you just call them up and say, I'm stuck, I'm not sure where I need to go from here. And then if you're teaching in a distance learning, a totally online class, there are lots of tools to use. They also have training on clickers, audience response systems. Has anybody used clickers in the classroom? So a few. Those are here on campus. We typically use just one kind to make it a little bit more consistent, a little bit easier on the students. And so there are training sessions in how to use that. Like any technology, there's a learning curve to that. You do need to spend time practicing so that you know what you're doing, because you're not just the student sitting in the audience, you're the one running the show, right? Echo 360 is in some classrooms. That's a way to record lectures. It's not in every classroom. Even the ones that don't have cameras in the classroom, you can record from the PowerPoint or whatever you're showing on the monitor, plus the mic can go into a file that can be posted. There's pros and cons to that, right? If I post all the lectures, why do the students come to class, right? So there's pros and cons that you need to think through, just like with any technology. All right? Where do you get the stuff? You may not have thought about that before, right? The assumption is that the professor came up with all that material, and sometimes that's the case. Other times, especially if you're kind of being thrown into a situation and you're thinking, where do I get all the stuff, right? Do I have to write all that? Do I have to scan all those images? Publishers provide excellent resources to their textbook. It's a way to induce departments to adopt that, or professors to adopt that textbook. So they'll provide test banks, they'll provide pre-made lecture PowerPoints, they'll provide online homework systems, and so those things are there for you to utilize, and I would caution with modification, with checking, all right? I've had test banks that have errors in them, so you need to check them yourself. I've had lecture PowerPoints that were misleading or incorrect in some of the facts, so you want to make sure that you're checking them for error, right? But it is a good way to get started. I find it's easier if somebody has something and I say, oh, I don't like that, I want to change that, I want to add to that, rather than just having a blank slate. All right. For some of you, like my TAs in the 2160, 2180 biology labs, the PowerPoints are given to you. That's nice. You have little to no work to do there. For others of you, that might not be the case. All right. First day of class is the most important day. That's going to be their first time that they see you, and they're going to make a lot of their impressions are going to come from that first day. I would arrive 20 minutes early just so you can get yourself settled. You can figure out how to turn on and off the lights. You know, if the computer's up and running, you get yourself logged in, kind of thing. It gets you a little bit settled. The students come in with questions. You're already set up now. You can answer questions, kind of thing. I would also stay after class. Plan on staying after class, especially that first day, so that people who are trying to get into the class, people who have questions, that they can get into contact with you. I would always put up a welcome to whatever class this is sign, so that when they walk in, they say, oh yeah, I'm in the right place. I have students who go so far down a hallway and just walk into any room. So like in the middle of lecture, like, this is not math. No, this is not math, right? In our building, we have problems because we'll have people from the chemistry labs in the biology labs. We'll have people who are supposed to be in 2160 sitting in 2180, right? They get their days confused. They write things down from the internet and they write them down wrong, right? Wrong day, wrong time, wrong place, wrong class. So that first week can be a little bit hectic, all right? So make sure you have that sign up so that helps you sort things out, all right? Start class on time. It sets an impression. If you're late, how can you expect them to be on time if the professor can't even be on time, right? Go over the syllabus. They're in college. They probably should be able to read. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. So I always spend a little bit of time going through and pointing out important parts, right? You need to have this syllabus. You need to put these days and times in your planner, whatever version of planner you're using, because you may or may not remind them every single lecture. In 2 weeks we have an exam. In 1 week we have an exam. Next time we have an exam. And you give the exam like, I didn't know there was an exam today. You have deadlines, right? So they need to get used to that. They may not have had that strong deadline kind of issue in high school. High schools tend to be more flexible. Well, if you're not ready, you can turn it in later. Oh, you didn't get the deadline, I can work with you. I tend not to be that way, right? This is the start of the real world for many of them, on time or not, right? That's part of your policies in your syllabus. Do you have a late policy? Do you offer makeup exams, right? So things to think about. And you'll find that as you're teaching, if you make your own syllabus, it gets longer and longer, right? Mine is 8 pages. Why is it 8 pages? Because we've had 7.5 pages of problems occurring at some point or other, all right? And then you go over some course content. Typically, the first chapter in any textbook is kind of an overview of their textbook. It may not be an overview of your course. And so usually the first chapter, I only cover in our first chapters of biology books. The scientific method is stuck in at the end. So I say, okay, most of the first chapter we're not going to go over in detail. It sets the stage for your 2-semester course in biology. But this last little bit, we're actually going to go through this. I'll talk about some of the terms, give you some examples. So there's a little bit of content that first day, right? Second day, you still may want to remind them about the syllabus. If it's posted on Blackboard, you can download it if you lose it or didn't pick one up. Because second day, third day, you'll still be getting people who have just managed to get here, either because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time or they've just registered, all right? So make sure you point those out. The first couple sessions of class, where do you get a syllabus if you've lost one, if you haven't picked one up, because they need those dates, they need those regulations. Dress code. Kind of an odd thing. You think, well, I put clothes on, right? That's fine. But dress code for you, for them, can be an issue, right? Now you're the one in front of the classroom. You're the one setting the tone. So what you wore as a student may not necessarily be appropriate for you as the instructor in front of the classroom. Professional dress. What does that mean, right? For many of you, that's going to vary, right? If you're in field of college, any new environmental sciences students? Well, no. Okay. So what you wear would be, if you're going out in the field collecting, is going to be significantly different from any new College of Business people. So they're probably expecting something much more formal of their TAs. And so, what you're wearing in the classroom does project that image. And some of you, when I started 21 years ago, I was actually younger than my first class of students. It was a senior level course. And so it helped me feel more confident to dress a little better. Doesn't mean that you have to throw out the t-shirts and the jeans and the cutoffs and the flip-flops. It just means that you need to be aware of that's part of your image that you're projecting. So you wear what makes you comfortable and what gives you confidence, right? For them, for the students, right, you can't really control what they wear. And some of it is amazing. For one reason or another, some of it is amazing, right? And so that, that brings up some of those civility and harassment kinds of things. So, but for some issues, it's safety, right? So shorts and flip-flops are not at all appropriate in a science lab where we're going to be doing specific kinds of experiments. So, for example, in the biology and chemistry labs, we have a very strict dress code. You show up incorrectly dressed, you don't come into lab today. You don't come into lab today means you get a big 0. 3 zeros of that kind means you flunked the course. That's all in the syllabus, right? Again, a contract between you and your students. So you can't tell them in a regular lecture class, what to wear, but in certain situations, a safety orientation. And so for the people going out field collecting, you'll want to make sure that you're telling your students that on those days that they need to dress appropriately for their safety and usability. All right? How? We've gotten through the what, the where, how. There's no one answer. Right? I've been teaching. Once I got my master's, I was actually starting to teach classes with a master's degree. You can teach lecture classes, and so, like I said, my first time teaching, I was actually younger than my students. My first lecture course, I was younger than most of my students, and so the how you teach will develop as you learn how to teach. You're going to find what works for you, what doesn't work for you. It's you know the material, that's a given. Now, right, how do I convey that? There are lots of ideas, approaches, opinions. Everybody has an opinion, right? And everybody's opinion is the right one. I just went to a conference this summer in a new kind of approach to teaching, and so I'm really changing a lot of the way that I teach. And so that develops. You'd think that after 21 years I'd know what I was doing, right? But that after a while you think, well, this is not working. I need to try something different, right? You can't force them to learn, but how do you induce them to learn? How do you lay out a pathway that's going to be better? Some of them, they'll get A's in the class no matter what you do to them, right? Some of them are at the opposite end of the scale. No matter what you do for them, they're not going to do well. That's reality. But in between there, you have a lot of influence. So you use your experience as a student, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, but you also have to realize that there's a diversity of learning styles, a diversity of experiences in your classroom. What worked for you obviously worked for you, but that may not be the best way for your students to learn, right? So you have to be aware of that. You can model good ideas from previous instructors, try to avoid the things that bad instructors did, right? To try and come up with your own way. There's no one right way, there's the way that works for you and your students. The best thing to do is to seek out a mentor. Probably not another graduate student, although it's good to have input, but have a faculty member, perhaps the person whose lab you're working in, whose course you're in, or somebody else on campus who you can bounce ideas off of. We'll talk about there'll be a whole session on right to privacy, about how much you can talk about details and with who, but you need somebody to talk to, right, who can lend some experience. There are lots of professional organizations who are solely dedicated to teaching. Most professional organizations have a branch that's dedicated to teaching. Then there are some organizations that are independent solely about teaching. They have lots of great ideas. And you may be planning on a research career. You may plan never to teach again, right? So there's two things to consider, right? Life takes some strange diversions. So even though right now you're thinking, I am never going to teach once I'm done with this, you may end up in a classroom, right? And so these experiences, that involvement, that on your resume can be an opportunity for jobs that you might not have considered. The other part of it is this is management, right? You have employees who you're providing information to. You have expectations of. You're dealing with day-to-day issues. You're dealing with deadlines and consequences. So this is as much management as it is managing any other kind of business. And so the student-professor relationship is a little bit different than employee-boss kind of thing, but it is that kind of management. You're going to deal with difficulties, with issues at a different level than you ever have as a student. All right, so lots of opportunities. All right, I'm close to time. Any questions? Now, a lot of these are going to be covered as you're going into specific sessions you see listed. But does anybody have any questions about teaching kinds of things that you had not thought about? How many of you are the actual instructor of record with no input? A couple. So hopefully you've been getting some guidance about what to do, what not to do, that kind of stuff to get you started, right? How many are at the opposite end where you're going into a multi-section, everything is already set for you? That's kind of the best place to be if you're a brand new teacher, because you're being given a lot of guidelines. So some people are in the middle. So make sure, right, Monday's first day, make sure you know what your role is. If you're at all unsure, even a little bit, make sure you're asking what your role is and how you're going to do that. All right? I'm done.